Okay, so we're talking about layer masks. So this is a quick tutorial on layer masks in Photoshop, and then we're going to take those layer masks on over into After Effects. So to begin with, we can work inside of Photoshop by creating a new file, and we're going to work with the size that we would like to have a final output for in this case. So if I create a new file, and I go over to Film a Video, you'll see that I have 1920 by 1080. If you want to do 4K, good luck with the renders, but you can totally do that. I will take it. Right now, the default settings are pretty good. I'm going to have a white background. I'm okay with that. I could put transparent if I would like, and then I would be able to change it myself. But in this case, it's either white, black, or background color, and it's going to create a layer with that already on there. So basically, if I go create, I don't have to worry about the white layer. It's something I could turn off right up here. Right now I have nothing else there, so if I create a new layer, I should be able to hide the previous layer, which is the background. Now, if I am working with this, I'm just going to show it so it's going to be easier to see. And this is okay here. What I can do is take my layers and put them back down here. You're going to see that I do tend to tear off layers quite often so that I can work inside of here, or if you use two monitors, it's pretty nice to have the layers and everything else that is taking up this space over to the other side of your monitor, wherever it may be. So if I'm working inside of here, I can do File, and I can place embedded, in this case, some images. So the images that I have taken already are on my drive. So let me navigate there, and I'll just go here to the classes folder, which would have been nice if I didn't have 9,000 subfolders. So I'm gonna go here, and we have our class, MGD 101 in this case, and I have this images folder. So I created a folder for all of my images. I'm just going to drop some stuff in there to show you some of the masking. Okay, so this could work out pretty well. There's also a lot of different images that you'll see here that I got from Unsplash. So don't forget, use your resources. In this case, unsplash.com. You all have the link to that. I grabbed some images for this, and again, just kind of come up with a theme. I'm doing this kind of grungy, not really post-apocalyptic scene, but something kind of like that in a sense. Okay, you can stick with the band thing. You could do baking. There's a lot of stuff for baking. There's specific types for baking. So if I did a like this, baking, there are a ton of different things for baking. So you're going to want everything to basically complement the piece that you're working on. Okay, if you do bakery, it's a bit different. You could even do cupcakes. There's a straight up baker, and you can get a theme pretty easily. So that is unsplash.com. There are others. I don't mind which ones you use. Just make sure that you're looking at the usage rights. Okay, these ones are pretty open for Unsplashes, that is, for education. And most things with education you can get away with, so long as you're not, gonna sell the artwork or anything like that, and you use, the wonderful rights of changing it to a certain percentage, which is always a gray area, so be careful about that as well. But we have lessons on that, so I'm not going to go into that here. I'm just going to load some of these images in. So let's say that I was going to take maybe this foreshortened image, and I'll put it right here, and I'm okay with the size of it, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. I would probably change the naming inside of the layers, so I'll double click that, and I'll just call this, I don't know, Guy foreshortened. I'll just put Guy 4 and then shortened. So I'm not worried about spelling in this case at the moment. Just something that's going to make sense to me. Okay, if you're amazing at naming layers like I am, then you're going to have a real fun time when you have like 100 layers or so. Now, another way that I work is that when I go to my selection tool, you can hit the V key if you like, or just simply click that little icon. If you click that little icon, then you're able to work on this image inside of here. I also turn on show transform controls, so some of you won't see that unless it's activated up here. That allows me to scale it and such, okay, inside of here, without having to go to a scale tool. I'll hit the escape key, and that's going to allow me to just place this image, okay? This is what we call a smart image, because you can see that there's a little icon right here, and that little icon in the corner of this thumbnail means that it's being foreshortened. I mean, not foreshortened, I'm sorry. It means that it is a smart object, okay? We're not going to go into smart objects, kind of explain that, but some things you can do with smart objects inside of Photoshop, and some things you need to rasterize a layer to do inside of Photoshop, okay? In this case, I'm focusing on layer masks. So what I could do is make a selection. We talked about the selection tools real quickly. Here's a quick recap. We have some basic selection tools up here. So rectangular, see that? And I have a feathering on that rectangle. So I'm gonna put this to 0, or just delete it altogether. And then I'll use the rectangle tool again and draw a new one out. And you're gonna see that, oh, it's putting my feather back. I don't want the feather. So I'll put 0 in there for a feather. And it might have told me that. I didn't read what it said just a second ago. Yes, so I need to put 0 instead of just deleting it out. Okay, so that would be a selection there. With any selection, you have modifier keys that you can add to or subtract from. So the main modifier keys in almost any program are going to be Shift, Control, Alt, and Spacebar. If you're on an Apple computer, it's going to be Shift, Command, Option, Spacebar. Okay, so if I hold down Alt, I get this little minus key. I can cut away from this, and you're seeing that those dotted lines are showing that I'm cutting away from that selection. Just to give you an idea, if I were to make a layer mask now, I can click on this layer mask. It's only going to keep what was selected. Okay, I'm going to undo that. Control Z to undo that. If I want to add to a selection, I can hold the Shift key, so I can add out this way. You're seeing that this thing is looking kind of like a puzzle. You can totally use that as a design element. Okay, and that could work for you. That could totally work for you. So I have something like that going on here, and I was just holding Shift that time. Control doesn't really do anything in this case, so I will just go to another selection tool. If I want to deal with selections, up here I have a whole menu for selections that I'll just go up there. And you're going to see that we have all of this stuff is based off of selections, and currently I do have a selection. Okay, so the one that I'm going to show you right now is just select, deselect, and the hotkey is Control D. So from here on out, I may just use Control D. But if you go to select, that's dealing with the selections. It's a selection tool, so it makes sense. And then you can go down to deselect, Control D. Okay, that allows me to use another tool. So I have all of these ones in here. This one's just circular. That's about it. And I need to have, let's see here. Oh, I see. This one also has a feather, so I'm going to type in 0 there. And it's a good thing to reset your tools. I didn't before this tutorial, so that actually works out pretty well to show you that resetting your tools is going to allow them to work the way that they need to work in general. Okay, so I can now make a little marquee, and the feather was too big for the marquee, in case you're wondering why it wouldn't let me do it with that high amount of feathering. Okay, I'm not talking about feathering, so not going to worry about that too much right now. But I can use my modifier keys, Alt, to cut away from this. Okay, if I made a little mask, that's this little icon right here next to the effects under your layers tab. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. Okay, I can hold Shift and add to my selections. And now I'm getting this really different looking selection. Okay, I'll hit Control D this time to deselect. And what I'll do now is go to my other selection tools. Now, as in class, we have the lasso tool. That one just allows you to, and let me just kind of zoom in on here. It's a little easier to see that. Okay. The lasso tool is just kind of like a free form. I could just kind of go around this just like that. I could still use my modifier keys, so I can hold Alt and say I don't want this in here, or I don't want the phone. Okay. Or I could add to this. I can hold Shift and undo what I've just done. I'll just add that back. Add this back. And I missed a little spot right there, so I'll add that back. maybe add this up here, maybe add this over here, and so on and so forth. Okay. I'll hit Control D or select, deselect to undo that. I'll go down to Polygonal Lasso tool, and that one's pretty nice because you can do single clicks, and that will allow you to make something kind of blocky. When you go to the end, which was the beginning, you can see that little part where I started. That's also the end of this. If I come over here and I get that little circle icon, that means I'm going to close the selection. So I close it by clicking it, and it says, okay, that's what you wanted as a selection. And that's okay. The other way that I was doing it is I could draw this thing out, and when I'm ready to just close it, I can hit enter, and it will close it based off of wherever my cursor was. Okay. I'll deselect that, and the way that this tool works is that if you're making selections with the lasso tool, you can use your modifier keys like Control. Oh, sorry, not Control, my bad. Your modifier keys like Alt, if you hold down Alt and you click and drag, that starts working as a freeform tool, kind of like the regular lasso tool was. Okay. I have released my left mouse button. In this case, I'm using a tablet, so I just lift my pen. I'm still in drawing mode, so I can hold down Alt again if I want to continue from there and click and drag. Okay, go over the brim of this hat or something like that. And then I release my left mouse button or raise my pen. If I release Alt, I am back in polygonal mode, so I could do single clicks. Okay. So I have some hard edges there, some single clicks. If I hold down Alt again, I can continue by, freeform drawing right here. And that works pretty well for me. Here's the end right up here. And boom. Okay, so that's the thing to practice, is going between holding Alt and not holding Alt. I'll hit Control D. That's pretty wicked selection, so whatever you might need that for, it could work. But again, remember, you can add to this. So if I needed a boxy style, kind of like that, and I need to kind of have more of an organic addition to it, I can hold down Alt and minus this away, and I can tap right there just to set one keyframe. I'm sorry, not keyframe, sorry. Get into animation there. But to set one point, okay? Now you can see that my little tool still has the minus key on there. That's how you're minusing things out. I'm not holding Alt down anymore. But if I were to click, I'm cutting away from this thing. If I want to hold down Alt and click and drag, I'm still cutting away from this thing, but organically. So I could do this whole like puzzly shape, okay? Then I could hit enter, and now I have cut that whole part away. If I didn't want to hit enter, I could have gone back to the beginning of this thing, and it would have been totally fine. That would work just good. Perfectly well, okay? I'll hit shift, and I can actually add to this thing. So if I hold shift and I click one point, or I could hold shift and alt this time at the same time, and I'll click and drag. And it actually didn't like that very much, but I'm holding shift. All right, and now I should be in an add mode, but I hold alt and I'll click and drag this way all the way to the end. And because I was holding shift and alt, I actually cut away from this where it was overlapping. So I'll hit Control Z because that is undoable. Control Z or edit undo. Okay. And I have that back. If I hold shift and I click once inside of here, it's going to say, okay, you're in add mode, because now there's a little plus sign instead of an X. So I can hold down alt and click and drag, and I can add all of this to that selection. Okay. Again, hold shift. I could even start out here. Click once, release shift, hold down alt, and you can drag all around this way. Okay, I'll hit enter because I'm okay with that. And now you can see that's part of the addition. To show you, I'll just click on the create a layer mask button, and it only keeps what I had selected. Okay, so that looks funky. That is pretty terrible, but it's pretty good for the example. All right, I'm gonna hit Control Z or edit undo, Command Z on a Mac, and undo right up there. I'll hit Control D to deselect, and I'll go down to some of my other tools. One that I didn't mention, I mentioned it in class, but I can just talk about it briefly here, is the magnetic lasso tool. And that tool's pretty awesome. You can come here and click on a part that has, an edge that kind of defines between a foreground, a background, or an object and something else. If you don't have this edge, it could get very lost, but the way that it works is pretty nice. You can click, and you're setting a point. Okay, and you're going to see all these little points they're just going to populate themselves as you go across this edge. So I'll click and I'll drag my pen. This would be the same thing as holding down your left mouse button. And as I'm dragging, you're seeing that it's finding the edge. Okay, if it has a hard time finding the edge, you're going to be able to, I'm releasing my left mouse button. Okay, I didn't mean to do that part, but I went too far over while I was talking. I can set a new point by tapping. So I can say, well, it was losing the edge here, so maybe it's jumping like out here. I can hold down or come over here and click once in between there, and I can set new points. So I can click. I'm just dragging along. I'm not even holding down my left mouse button or my pen. My pen's above the tablet, and it's magnetically finding this thing, unless you go too far away from that border edge. But I can keep going, and if it can't find a point, like it's going too far in this way or too far out that way, to the left, right, or up or down, then I can actually just click. So I clicked right there. I could click right here to say there's a transition between the pants and the shirt or jacket, and then I can just keep going like this. And I would be able to go around the whole object. So if I'm working with this, I can hold down spacebar at any time, move this, because sometimes it's easier just to get in closer. Okay, hold down spacebar and move this. And my point was right about there, so I'm going to release my spacebar to jump back into my magnetic lasso tool, just like that. Okay, and I could click a point if I want, or I could just keep dragging this, and it will find that edge. And this edge is a little more well-defined, so it's going to have an easier time finding it. Hold spacebar, get the little hand, and this is just like sliding your paper in real life. If you had a really large paper that you're drawing on, slide it around, okay, and then you jump back to whatever your tool is. And it's not finding this, so I'll click right there. Oops, I clicked too far in. That's all right. I can go fix that. Anyhow, I would be going around this and here. See how it's losing that right there? That's where I would say, nope, come back over here. And maybe I need to click there. And it's not finding that, so I got to do a few clicks. Yeah, so this is a perfect example of where it's getting lost right there in nature. Okay, and so this I'm going to have to fix. I wouldn't spend too much time on that because I know a lot of different ways of fixing it. This is going to be much easier than putting 1,000 points there. Okay, so this is what you would do, and you go around the whole object and hope that you get a good, good selection. I'm not going to do that for the sake of this tutorial, but look at all the points it's making right there. It's pretty nice. Okay, and the tool works fantastically. I'll hit escape. Escape is a good way of getting out of a selection or something like this that you're working on. If it's already a closed selection, then you're just going to have to deselect it. So select, deselect. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. The last set of selection tools that I'm going to talk about are going to be, I'm not going to talk about the magic wand so much. I'll mention it. You could select it and it will select colors, like broad colors, okay? Like the white in his jacket in that section. If I hold shift, I can add to that selection by clicking all these different other colors, okay? And it can get messy really fast. But if you have something that stands out pretty well, like the white of the shoe maybe, it kind of stands out. I mean, there's this little darker part here that maybe if you're skating or something like that, it's really easy to scrape your shoe like that. So I'm just going to hit Control D to deselect that. And I'll go up here, but that's what the magic wand does. It selects like colors that are connected for the most part. But I'll go to the quick select tool, and this one's pretty awesome. This is going to matter on size, okay? I'll hit the left bracket key, and that's next to the P key on your keyboard, to scale my brush down. The right bracket key to make it larger, okay? If you don't remember that, you can come up here to the actual brush settings, drop this down. It's the size right here that I'm changing, okay? If you have a scroll wheel on your tablet, you could also change that by hitting the middle button, and you could tell it to do the brush size opposed to auto scroll, okay? So there's brush size, and if I use my wheel now, you're gonna see the brush gets larger or smaller, okay? So that's one way of working as well. So bracket keys next to the P key, or your wheel, your scroll wheel. And there might be other ways of doing it, but that's just the main parts or main ways I do it. Okay. So this is pretty good. It'll allow you to select, and it's always in plus mode when you first select it. You could change the modes up here, but I like to leave it in plus mode. Okay. Instead of general select, we have the plus or minus. Instead of clicking it up here, I use modifier keys just like before. So if I hold down the Alt key, it turns to minus. And I can say, well, I didn't mean to, get all of this in here. So I can minus that out. And maybe my brush was too big. So you'll see that if I get closer to his face, maybe this black part right here was blending in with the black part of his hood. That's okay. I can make the brush smaller. In this case, I'll hit the left bracket key, hold down Alt, and kind of paint that away. This one I could paint back with a smaller brush. And it is a little bit more clean. Okay. And that's working out okay. I'm not too worried about these pixels here. I could add them. I could get really close and fix those, but I'm just going to blend it. I'm not going to worry too much about being super perfect about this because I can paint these away. And I'm going to show you that in our layer masks. Okay. So I'll just add to this. And this is a pretty smart tool. So if I go quickly, it's gotten a lot better. And there are some values inside of this that are going to allow me to select it a little more easily. Okay. You see that the tool analyzes. So what it first selects, it doesn't necessarily commit to. It readjusts itself based off of, the edges that you're selecting, the color range that it's noticing. I can get closer here because I might have missed the top part of the pants. And I can make the brush a little bit smaller like that. And then I can go and kind of just paint that in. You'll see that it'll reevaluate things around there. And I can get the top of the pants, just go over the lining here. It's so much easier with the pen too. So if you have a tablet, I would use it. All right. And I could add these back in here. Yeah, and that's pretty good. I'm not too worried about something that minute in this case. But if you are and you just kind of want to mess with it a little bit, feel free to go over that. I'll hit Control minus key. That's one of the ways I'm working. Control minus, Control plus. Again, if you're using a tablet, you can hit the little middle part of your wheel or wherever it says to change it. And you can go to auto scroll or zoom. Okay. And now I can zoom in by rubbing my finger on the wheel, or zoom out by going counterclockwise. So clockwise, counterclockwise. Okay. So I'm gonna get my brush back, my selection tool, come down here, hold down Alt, get rid of this mess right there. And if my tool's too small, it's being a little too precise for the foot. That's okay. We get a little bit closer. Change the brush size a little bit. Okay. I'll hold Alt and just kind of get rid of this right here. Get a little closer. See, and it's so smart. It's such an awesome tool. And I'll just add this in here. Okay. So these are some of our selections. I'm not going to spend the entire time doing this selection. I'll just do kind of like a brief selection here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over this thing in the layer masks. Okay. Because we're going to paint them in. Yeah, look at that mess. Alt. I might have to click in here and drag a bit. Look for stragglers. Yeah, so this is happening pretty well. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish this thing off real quickly. And that was awesome. Did you see how well that thing picked it up? And this is great. Yeah, this is pretty good. The only thing I'd have to pay attention to is I know I'm missing that collar. And that's going to make it look really weird. I'll hold down Alt this time and go this way to deselect. So don't forget about that. Alt is going to be one of your best friends in this case. Okay. It's always set to plus. So when you release Alt and then you click and drag with your left mouse button or with your pen, tablet pen, I don't know. I guess they both sound pretty good. Then that will work for you. And then you can use your wheel. Awesome. So now if I was going to superimpose this person into another composition with that selection, I'll come down here to the layer masks and I'll click that. And it'll make a mask out of my selection. Okay. You're going to notice a lot of nastiness sometimes. You're seeing that my selection was not the best, but at the same time, I'm not too worried about it because we're just going to paint around it to kind of fix it. Okay. If you're going for that grungy look, that's okay. You can actually amplify it in another way. And I can try to show you that, but if you use a different brush, you can get this really dirty look and it looks pretty awesome to kind of give that grunge effect. Okay. So in this case, if I come up here, look at that. That's not good. I'm gonna get my paintbrush tool. Okay. Because now we're painting. Now, the way that this works is that you're gonna paint with whatever colors in the front. So you're seeing that I can click on this little arrow to switch colors, just like that. And the rule of thumb inside of Photoshop is that white reveals and black conceals. So if you paint with white, it's going to reveal stuff. And it has to be specifically right here on the layer mask. So if I have my thumbnail selected, I go and work on something else, and I come over here and I click on this layer, it's going to automatically select my thumbnail. So if my thumbnail is selected, I'm going to be painting black onto this image. Okay. Now it's a smart image, so it's not going to let me paint on it. So that's one good thing about a smart image in this case. Okay. But if I want to paint on it, and you get this, Photoshop is not broken because that little sign is there. It just means you can't paint on this because it's not going to allow you to change the pixels. Okay. It likes the pixels the way that they are, and it's remembering that because it's a smart image. All right. If it was rasterized, you would be painting black all over this, or whatever this kind of like greenish color is. Okay. But if I click on this little icon right here, this is going to be my thumbnail for my layer mask. Okay. So if I paint with white, it's going to start revealing stuff. I'll undo that. Control Z. And if I switch my color to black, to paint with black, it's going to conceal. Okay. And you're going to see that I use a soft brush a lot of the time with an opacity, but you might need to use a hard brush, or you can go over a few things a few different times. Okay. Now it's good to go around your image to see if you have any other mistakes like that. And I don't. So that's pretty good. So again, if I was going to work on something else and come back to this layer, I want to work on it, then I'll come back over here and I need to click on specifically my layer mask right here. Okay. And you can see that it's selected because it has these little white boxy type of selection displays to show that you have what you have selected. So if I select the thumbnail, it now has little white boxy display things that selection marks, I guess we can call them selection marks. That makes sense, right? Don't know the correct terminology inside of here for it, but as long as that makes sense, because the important part is you have to know what you have selected. So I can kind of zoom in here, and if I'm going to paint, the brush size makes a difference. You'll notice that if I'm painting with this, and I'll just kind of cut in to this right here so you can see. If I'm painting with a larger brush, I have a feather on my soft brush. I'll click this little arrow here, and I'm in my soft brush here. I like to use a soft brush because it'll do a blend for you at the smaller brush sizes. Okay. But the larger brush sizes, like what I have now, or larger than that even, just to show you an extreme, this is what it does. See that? So if I was going around this, it's doing what's called a feather. It's really, kind of smoothly cutting into this. And that's not going to be ideal at a large brush size. At a small brush size, though, it's going to allow us to get rid of hard edges, like this one over here. It's going to help us fix what we, selection-wise didn't have very well selected, I guess we can say. So I could either cut away from this thing by painting black in a smaller brush. So look at this. You're going to see there's going to be a little bit of a smoother take. Okay. And that's going to look better right there. That looks pretty good. You can go over it as many times as you want. So if you have something that's too hard, it looks like you cut it out of a magazine, you can go over this. Okay. Now the cool thing about this is that it works really nicely to blend it in. And sometimes you're just going to get better selections and better blends, okay? Or you can use some other methods that we don't really have time to go over right now inside of here. Okay, and I'm cutting away from this. I could do the opposite. So I could actually paint in. I could change the color to white to reveal. I'm going to be painting in, so you're going to see that this gives you a little icon now. Let me show you. I can come over here and right-click on the thumbnail. And if it's not letting me do that, I'll just try to right-click in here somewhere. And it'll show that I'm looking for this large thumbnails. If I show you a large thumbnail, the white is showing what's revealing. And you'll see it's a silhouette of that person, okay, sitting down. So I could select that. And then I'm painting with white, so I will be painting in color, okay? So I was painting away, now I'm painting in, like this. So I could paint this back in. I know I cut that in a little bit, and that's okay. And maybe I want to reintroduce some of the stuff inside of here. That's all right. You can go over it a few times to kind of get a little better, selection or cutaway. Now this is kind of, I don't know, it's going to add an outline there. So there's too much of the background getting reintroduced. So I'll just go paint with black. And I'll just paint that away. Let's see in this case, just like that. Okay. Too much here, that's fine. We can get away with getting rid of those and kind of cutting into the image a little bit. It's going to be all right. Shouldn't be too noticeable, but you'll notice when you start, adding whatever elements you're going to add into there and seeing the background. Okay. So this is painting to and painting away. And you would go around this and make it look pretty nice. Again, it's going to be easier with this little tablet. I think I'm using like a 13-inch tablet from corner to corner. So I have two really big monitors here. And this little tablet actually works pretty good for me. So when I lift my pen, it'll allow me to do another mark and paint right here. And I can't really tell what's going on. So if you need to see, you know, something better between the two, I would put a background in here or an image. But usually if I could take this one, I can click the little lock to unlock it. But let's say that I want to fill that with black. I'm just going to tell you the hotkeys. If I hold down Alt and hit delete, it fills it with the foreground color, okay? So Alt or Option and hit delete. Control or Command and hit delete will fill it with the background color. So you'll see it will fill it with this, the one behind it, right there. Okay, so I'll hit Alt Delete again, or Option Delete, and then you can see what's going on with this. I'm also going to back out a little bit so that I can get rid of that pixelation, just to see a little more clearly what I have going on here. Okay, the pants, they look pretty messy. They're also dark, so I would have to switch to light. I could make a new layer, and I can click on this little icon. It's the same thing as hitting the D key, okay? If you hit the D key or click on this little icon here with the little black and white swatches, it's going to switch it back to black and white colors. So if I hit Control or Command Delete now, it'll fill that layer with white. So now I would pay attention to the pants. So I'll select my mask, my layer mask, okay? Just click on it. Come over here and I will paint with white this time. So I'll come swap these. The hotkey to swap them is X, or you could just click on this little arrow. I like to hit X a lot, okay? So I can come in here and start painting things in with white, okay? And I could paint them in to where they're going to be not too hard lined there. But right here, that looks kind of crazy. Like pants can do that a little bit, but you know, X to maybe paint away. Maybe I did too much. Okay. But you just want to get something to be a little more cohesive. Like my shoe here. That is a mess. That is a mess. So I'll hit X and I'll paint parts of the shoe back in right here. And I will paint with opacities a lot of the time. So my opacity right now is 100%. But my brush, since I'm using my stylus here for the Wacom tablet, the little pen, it's going to have an automatic percentage, okay? I'm using a soft brush, so I'm not too worried. I can even make the brush a little bit larger because I'm seeing that I'm getting, you know, a little bit more areas to bring back. And this is okay if I'm painting them back in. That looks like texture right there. So I'll switch to black and kind of paint this back away, okay? But I still want the shoe to look complete. So the smoothness of this should work pretty nicely in here. I can cut this way a little bit. Painting with black. And then you just kind of keep doing this all around the image. So I'll hit X to paint with white. Kind of bring this back in. See that? And then you're going to paint to and from this foot or whatever image you're working with. I can tell it's background look. It looks the same. So I'll hit Control Z and then I'll hit X and I'll paint away and I'll just kind of go in here. Look at that. It's nice and pretty. Okay. So paying attention to this line detail is really, I mean, it can kind of be tedious. And this is a little bit more difficult image than some of the stuff that we've worked on. You'll see that some things are staged. And what I mean by staged is that photographers and people that are planning out for their shots or their compositions, they will be able to stage something at the photography part of things. And what happens is that they already have a nice look, okay, in camera that is going to separate like the background and the foreground together or from each other. They're going to be very apparent. And what I mean by that is, watch this. If I go to Unsplash, like I was looking at here, and I did a search for, let's see, I don't know, headshot. This is a headshot. They'll put them behind, you know, put something behind them like that. I mean, it looks good and you can just use it the way it is. But if you were to cut this person out, you could see a really defined line between the head, the body. This is a little bit, that might be a little tricky right there. But these parts here would be easy to cut out. Okay, easy to select. This person would be super easy. This gets a little blurry here, so the camera's really focusing on the face, not the body. The blur could cause a bit of an issue, but again, that's where you paint things in and out, you know. So there's a lot of different scenarios when it comes to this. This would be pretty easy. Even the hair strands with the way that Photoshop works now and its selection modes. So we have better selection for edges and such that we're not going to get into in this case. But this is just a brief little example of how you can work with Photoshop to get, you know, little better selections and such. Okay. So the next part of this is we're going to do whatever additions you're going to do inside of here. And I would clean all this up because that looks crazy. But if I did bring something else in just to do some tests, you're going to be bringing in a bunch of different layers. So I'll do File, Place Embedded. And I can place maybe, I mean, fire's kind of cool, but I don't really have a background. If I put, I guess, let's see what the smoky background looks like. Or actually, I could put this grunge background. It's just a texture. So I'll place Embedded, rotated it. So I'll just rotate it like this. If I hold Shift, it will constrain the proportions. Okay. And then I can just drag this up. And if I need to surpass one side, that's fine. I could totally do that. You can use arrows, your arrow keys. And I usually will go over the border a little bit, kind of like this on each side. I don't want that white line to be introduced. And what I mean by that is if it's too close, then you can have that little lip right there of a white line. See that? So if you overlap it further, like that, and you know that that selection or the object is going or surpassing the canvas area or our work area, if you will, then you know that that's going to look pretty good. Okay, so that's pretty nice right there. I'm going to be happy with that, and I will come back with another section of a tutorial here. Okay, so let me hit enter, and I'll put this layer behind our person just to kind of close this one off, just like this. All right, so now we're designing, okay, and we'll be able to add fire elements and different things like that inside of here. The layer masks should go over, and in the next portion, what we're going to do is we're going to bring this thing into After Effects to work with. Okay, so just try to, you know, clean up your surrounding areas on the edges much better than I have right here. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on it. Okay, but you do it. You do some really good work. You know, take pride in your work. I would definitely do this if I was going to output it to a professional format or to a client. Okay, so if I took this person, I can see what it's going to be like over here. And then if you're doing a, you know, we're going to be using text, like you're going to do something about the COVID thing, or I don't know, you're going to do something about history or just quotes and stuff like that, then you can design with text. You can design with quotes and whatever you want. So you can have text in there and all these other things that you're going to bring into, you know, After Effects or something. Real quick, I can just put text. So come click there, text, get my selection tool, and I will just drag that out to make it larger. Okay, so this is just going to be another layer that I can take over. You're going to see my properties. It says Myriad Pro. Oh, I scaled it, so I have to hit enter to be okay with that. Okay, I can change my color here. So if I wanted a darker grayish color, you know, that might work. I don't know. Might have to change it, but for now, I'm going to call it good. Change the actual font to something that might work with this piece. And I'm going to have to be happy with something real soon because we can't spend all the time trying to find a font. All right, so maybe, yeah, that sample's kind of hard to see, but I think you can deal with that all right. What I could do is my advanced properties. Let me click on that, and I'll just bring it closer together. So I do look for my, let's see here, where is it? Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. Nope. Let's do the tracking. Too far. keeps jumping back. Let's do 75. 10. Anyway, you can play with these between the tracking and such. I believe that's supposed to be tracking. That's the horizontal scale. So this is the tracking that I'm messing with. You can type in a value even. So 0. And that's close enough. I'm just going to be happy with that. I'm not entirely happy with that text. You could actually even select this and just hit the arrows to go up and down. But this recording is getting kind of long, so I'm just going to go ahead and end it. And in the next section, we're going to take these over to After Effects, so you can do some of your animations in there. And we're just going to kind of play with that. You can animate things the way that you want to animate them in, and you'll see how it works inside of After Effects on the next tutorial. Okay? So see you there.